In my field, we talk a lot about gatekeepers. Oftentimes, agents and publishers are who get the blame for blocking out stories that we need and want as readers. But there's another gatekeeper that I find to be much, much more powerful, and that gatekeeper is you. Today, I want to talk about whether you are the one that is blocking your book from being finished and published. Stay tuned.
You've been writing your memoir, maybe even for years. You know your material, you know what it means. What's missing isn't the story, it's the structure. And that's why we started the Memoir Method Book Club. Every single month, Emily Thrash, a professional writer and editor, teaches you how to read like a writer by breaking down a published memoir and showing you what it's doing under the surface. Your first session is free. Head over to pageandpodium.com/book club to sign up.
It is so important that we are thinking about gatekeepers in publishing. This has been an issue since the beginning of the publishing industry, and very often it has meant that the most marginalized people do not get their stories out. Of course, this is a huge, huge problem. But what I really want to tackle in this particular video is the solution that you can begin to implement today for the biggest gatekeeper, which is almost always ourselves. And I want to start today by giving you a framework for thinking about the ways that we self-monitor, that we self-limit what we can really do, both in terms of our expression and the final placement or publication of that expression. After we get through our framework, I am going to give you some practical tips in the form of 4 questions you can ask yourself to determine whether the real gatekeeper we need to take care of is actually you. So let's dive in. As I mentioned, the first thing that I want to do is lay out a framework for understanding how we are our own gatekeepers. Of course, on the surface, it does seem like we would want all the best for our book, that we would be setting ourselves up for all the advantages our book could have, and that we would just want that book out. Unfortunately, all the time I hear of these situations where really there is no external block other than that the author themselves does not believe that they are worthy of participating alongside the published authors that they admire. So how can we think about this? Well, I want to pull in a philosopher that has become a little more popular in recent days, but I still find that he doesn't get talked about quite as much in the mainstream as when I was an academic, and that is Foucault. Now, I want to think about the way that we gatekeep ourselves, the way that we keep our own books out of the public eye through the lens of Foucault's panopticon. Now, the panopticon sounds kind of like an intimidating theory. It actually is very, very intuitive. The idea behind the panopticon: imagine a prison in which there is an open yard that the prisoners can spend their time. At the same time, there is a high, high tower in the middle of that yard with, supposedly, guards that can monitor every single thing that is happening in the yard. Now, if you are a prisoner and you can see the guard there, well, certainly you know, right? Oh, his back's to me, I can do whatever I want to, or oh, he's watching, better really make sure I'm doing what I'm supposed to. But Foucault's panopticon idea, the idea is that the prisoners cannot actually see or understand or monitor the guard. Instead, they are simply led to believe, through usually a series of trainings, that that guard is always watching. Well, what happens when we believe that we are constantly being watched? What happens when we think we are being surveilled at all times, and that if we step outside a very narrow set of rules, we're going to be punished? Well, of course, we don't even need a guard at that point. We become our own guards. And this is Foucault's point. All it takes is enough sense that we are being monitored toward a particular set of behaviors, and we will eventually self-police ourselves. We will eventually turn those rules on ourselves, and that is when any authoritarian or fascist or prison guard regime is at its strongest, when we do the work for them. And I see this all the time in publishing. We are out there seeing these finished published books, talking to their authors, hearing from their authors, following along on podcasts. We see this shiny, glossy outcome. And very often, the result of that is that we turn these often imagined standards of publishing onto ourselves. And spoiler alert, we will find ourselves lacking every single time. I hear this when folks talk about the number of social media followers they need to feel like their platform is big enough. They have seen the numbers that other people have, and they are monitoring themselves, declaring themselves not good enough with their social media. More often, I will hear it at the sentence level, that they are seeing that other authors have really beautiful sentences that they really, really admire. And by comparison, they will find themselves lacking. So, how does this look then as a function of the industry turned in on our internal judgment system? Well, whatever that rule that we perceive is, enough social media followers, beautiful enough writing, we don't have a real actual set standard for that. There is no minimum number of social media followers, and there's no model for a perfect sentence. So when we are monitoring ourselves, the standards that we place are so much higher than the publisher ever would, almost always. So we have got to get this internal guard off our backs because it is the absolute opposition to creativity, to expression, and by extension, to publishing excellence. We gotta get him out of there. So to break this down for you so that you have something to actually move forward with practically, I thought about the 4 types of ways that we can really think about this gatekeeper showing up. And I've put together a question, a thought-provoking kind of journal prompty type of question that you can use for each of these to just make sure that you're really checking in with yourself and you're really, really certain that you are controlling things and not some imagined publishing gatekeeper that we have internalized into our poor author's heart. Okay, so with that said, the first question that I want you to ask yourself to really determine whether this is actually you driving the ship or some internalized guard, are you comparing your first draft with a edited, revised, copy edited, proofread, final layout, finished, published book? Because if you are doing that, that is not fair at all. So I see this all the time. Folks will get a scene down on paper. They'll feel pretty good about having finished it. But then when they look at this other person's writing, well, oh my goodness, their sentences aren't tight and crisp like that. Well, they don't have these really unique word choices throughout. They don't have this kind of symbol that reoccurs, a motif maybe. Well, all of those things and many, many more are things that come through the editing process. Those are all what we might call second, third, fourth, eighth draft problems. They are not things that we expect to see in a first draft, and they are not things that that author had in their first draft. I can almost guarantee it. So, why are we comparing ourselves to these already published authors and their already published books? Well, the main reason is that we have internalized this idea that that published book, that book we pulled off the bookstore bookshelf, was perfect like that from the beginning. Well, spoiler alert, it isn't perfect now even, and it wasn't perfect when it went to the publisher. It was not perfect when it got its book deal. It is not perfect, and it's not a standard for you. When we think about the actual standards of publishing, they are not so simple that we can pull a book off the bookshelf at a bookstore and look at it and know exactly what we need to do to be, scare quotes, good enough for the traditionals. This just simply isn't a thing. And if you are finding that you are internalizing standards from published books onto your first draft, you are almost certainly in the book panopticon. You are almost certainly internalizing standards that may or may not even be there onto your first draft. Okay, the second question that I want you to ask yourself, just to check in, see whether it really is a gatekeeper problem or whether you are the gatekeeper, is what scares you about publishing? Now, I find that this is the type of thing that lives in authors' head, especially authors who are working on their first book 24/7. We are constantly feeling that anxiety of what will happen when we publish, what is so scary about it. But at the same time, I find most authors don't ever voice those fears. Most of the time, we are trying to keep them buried in the back of our mind, and I bet you can see where I'm going with this. Anything that is buried in the back of our mind might as well be a panopticon guard. As long as those things are things we know are there but refuse to acknowledge, we're going to be stuck in this gatekeeping spot. So let's get it out. I said these are great journaling prompts, and this one in particular is going to be a game changer. When we think about what we're scared of, when we actually put it to paper, oftentimes it's not nearly as scary as we thought it would be. And just as often, we can figure out the support that we'll need if that scary bad thing happens. So, what are you scared of? Are you scared of the visibility that would come if you did get that book deal, if you did release that book? Are you scared that you would find out you really have no talent at all, you didn't know what you were doing? Are you scared that you personally are not good enough, that the book will be good, but you won't be able to promote or market it, that no one will buy it, that you'll get bad reviews? What are you afraid of? I guarantee that those little voices are part of the reason that your book is not moving forward as quickly or efficiently as you want it to. I guarantee every single time this is going to trip you up. So really check in with yourself, because these are big barriers when we're thinking about moving forward with our books. All right, the third of the 4 questions that I want you to ask yourself, and again, be very, very honest with yourself. Are you jealous when you hear of someone else publishing a book? Now, this is not something that any of us like to acknowledge in ourselves. I know, I hate it too. But very, very often, when we want something so badly, what ends up happening is that we will really block ourselves from moving forward with it, and instead try to discipline other people and also keep them from moving forward with us. Now, this is something that happens so often. So let me kind of give a couple of other examples of this mind trick. This is a really common self-sabotage thing. If you are familiar with kind of the policing of women's bodies and clothing, if this is something that you have lived, which if you are a woman, you have absolutely lived this. So I'm talking about things like, oh, that skirt is too short, or I'm talking about, oh, you shouldn't be sitting that way if you're wearing that type of skirt, or that is too low cut of a dress for this particular occasion. All of these kinds of criticisms that we tend to make about other people's clothing, almost always women, but other people's clothing, almost all of those, if we really reflect on ourselves, they're almost always rules that we think we have to follow. You can see, again, where I'm going here. We have, in this case, turned ourselves into the patrol for other people, but not because it means or matters at all to us whether they follow the rules, but because we feel that we have to follow the rules. And there is nothing that will make you more jealous or angry than feeling like you have to follow a rule but other people don't. So, let me put this into book industry terms. When we think about being jealous or being angry of other people publishing their book, that is a natural response. I am not shaming anyone for that feeling. Most of the time when we feel jealousy or anger, it is the result of having one of our needs not be met. And typically, the need that's not met is the thing we're jealous of the other people exercising. So, you know where I'm going with this. If this is something that resonates with you, I really want you to ask yourself, can you get to that place too? Are you able to move forward the same way that author did that you're jealous of? It might not stop you from feeling angry or jealous. It just might not. But it's worth evaluating if that's what's happening. Because truly, if you have that dream, stopping other people from having that dream is not really going to do you any good. What you've got to do is, instead of keeping them in the box, you got to let yourself out. So get rid of that gatekeeper who is telling you that you can't do it, and instead, let's go join our new friends, the published authors. And the fourth question that I want you to ask yourself, just to check on whether those gatekeepers really might be inside of you, is who will you be when this book is finished and published? One thing that I find so often is that it's really, really difficult to imagine what your life will be like, how you will feel, who you will be at the other end of this huge, long, often very nebulous process. We know that we can get through to the end. We are determined to get through to the end, but it's a different question entirely to ask ourselves who we will be. And the reason I think this is so important to ask is we often expect ourselves to know how to handle problems that are not coming down the line for quite some time. We often feel like we should know how to handle book marketing even before we've drafted our third or fourth chapter. We should know about publishing options before we've even started our outline. And the truth is, you don't really have to have a full understanding of any of that stuff until it comes up. And at that point, don't you trust yourself enough to figure it out? By that point, you will have been through so much in the process of writing this book. You're not likely to be the same person that you are now. So, if there is a part of you that's saying, you know what, I'm not like those authors though. I am personally not someone that's capable of handling authorship, or I am not the type of person that publishers look for. I want you to really ask yourself, is it possible that you will be the type of people that publishers look for? Is it possible that you will be that kind of author once the book is done, once you have been through the querying process and the production process and all the processes in between? What if you are that person? Now, as you've been listening, I hope that I've given you some things to chew on. None of these are quick, easy answers, and all of them may change from day to day, writing session to writing session. It's just part of our brains trying to protect us. But the thing to remember is, just like the prisoners that have that imaginary guard, he's not even up there, you're not in any danger either. You will be okay, and there is no reason to be so scared that we keep ourselves out of this place where we deserve to have our voices heard. So, with that, I really want to encourage you to interrogate yourself. Is the call coming from inside the house? And think about how to move that mindset forward. This is something, by the way, that is a specialty for me and all of our team at Page and Podium. So if it would be helpful to have a strong team of well-trained women who know how to shepherd you through this process while holding on to your unique voice and your unique message, reach out. You can get me at pageandpodium.com/contact. Set up a time to chat and we can talk about whether the group program might be the best option, individual one-on-one coaching, or if you're further along in your publishing journey, whether you would like to submit your work for consideration for our publishing list. I can't wait to hear how things are going, and I really cannot wait to hear about what it's like to really think about whether you are your own gatekeeper. In the meantime, happy writing!